Of course, Andrea Blackman talked to us about the conversations that are going around the table on civil rights and a civil society. Well, those conversations are being taken to paper and turned into spoken word of sorts by an artist, a local artist in Nashville. Her name is Stephanie Pruitt, and she has a strong and phenomenal background of being able to take people's words, your own words, and turn them into something beautiful in the end. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you, April. I'm glad to be here.
So we bumped into you not that long ago. Yes. We heard what Andrea had to say about what she was doing with the curriculum, civil rights and the civil society. You have a part to play there too, where once the folks go through the course and they put some feedback onto paper, you're turning it into something. Let's start with talking about what you're doing there with all the colorful sticky notes that we see.
Right. Well, I'm quilting the participants' feedback, responses, or questions into one cohesive poem. I think a lot of us attend events or workshops, experiences, and maybe we ask for feedback, or there's a suggestion box, and maybe we wonder what happens to those, to those thoughts. Well, in this case, Andrea and other leaders at the library knew that there was really something there in that feedback. And as we read over them, we realized they were a work of art in themselves. So I've been arranging hundreds and hundreds of Post-it notes into a poem.
And give me an idea of what, is it one word, two words, complete sentences? What kind of feedback are people giving you once they experience the curriculum?
That's one thing I really loved. There was a whole range. Some of the Post-it notes had a single word. Some of them had 3 or 4 paragraphs. I think people experience the workshop in very different ways, and there's space for them to reflect that. I think a lot of them are still thinking and processing. So some people had a bullet list of questions. Some people had a single word: powerful, confused, scary, grateful, hopeful. Some people talk about their experiences that they have had with social justice issues. So it was really a wide range, and I think it reflects the fact that the program is actually using art in some ways in their curriculum. There are beautiful black and white, beautiful and sometimes sad black and white photographs that the participants are looking at. So they're looking at artwork from a photographer. They're looking at a film, a short documentary film by an artist, a filmmaker. And I think art often opens up conversations in ways that don't have a neatly tied up bow or conclusion to them. And so in like fashion, their responses on the Post-it notes often don't have a nice neatly tied bow on them.
That's what I wondered, because it seems like they would be all over the place simply because you've got different ages represented, you've got different races represented, you've got different genders, different religious backgrounds, I'm sure. So what story are you capturing right now, and what theme does it seem to have right now?
It seems that the conclusion that I'm coming to in putting together this poem is that we all have different perspectives. And in actually acknowledging and realizing our varying perspectives, we actually recognize one another's humanity. So a lot of the responses on the Post-it notes were all over the place. Some people said, I really empathize with the police. Why do we always make them out to be the bad guy? Some responses said, why were the black people treated this way by the police? I don't understand that fear and hate. And so my role as a person quilting these together into a poem was not to come to a conclusion about the relationship between communities and law enforcement.
You want to stay objective.
Exactly, stay objective and just bring that to the forefront of the conversation. And I think I did see that several people's comments on Post-it notes were things like, I realized there are other ways of looking at this. So a lot of the big aha moments were recognizing, I would say, their own empathy and seeing that people across the table from you might see things a bit differently, and that's still valid.
Seems like, and of course this is the beauty of your work, but it seems like it would be a bunch of scattered thoughts, you know, from those who are differing opinions. And I wonder how you make it come together without clashing together.
Right. That was part of the fun and really the challenge of this project. I initially thought I would try to group like with like in the Post-it notes, so pulling together similar themes. And I realized not only did that not reflect the reality of the project, but it tried to oversimplify the poem and what I was doing. So instead of grouping things by theme, I decided to actually look for opposites, for oppositions, and pull them together. And that's part of what I really love about poetry and all art. I think all art is based on relationships. Relationships of things, ideas, people, or places that we don't expect to come together. So when you think about symbols or metaphors and other literary devices, it's about relating two words to one another, an image to one another. So that's what I was trying to do in the poem, pulling together ideas that might seem incongruous, but showing how they really do fit together.
Your work board that you have looks like a thing of magic. You've got these diagrams, drawing boxes and connecting words together with all of these multicolored Post-it notes everywhere. For the person just look from outside looking in, it looks like a bunch of confusing mess, but it makes sense to you. So I wonder in the end, and when in the end, will you have sort of that final thing to pull together?
Right, it does. There was a 200 square foot glass wall that I was working on, arranging all the Post-it notes, and so you would see arrows drawn from Post-it note to Post-it note and things that were numbered just all over the place, so it did look like a web of confusion. And that's how my mind often works. My mind is often looking for those connections, so it looks very messy from the outside and sometimes feels quite messy from the inside.
It was amazing though to see how you were pulling different things together, because you don't know who wrote what, correct?
No, I don't.
Everything is anonymous, but you can figure out, I bet, based on what the comment is, who's who, or can you? Sometimes the handwriting would key me into the fact that that might be a child, but I also saw themes where I could actually look and figure out what date or what time frame it might have been written. So if there were things that were happening in the news at the given time, often people would pull those into their comments. So they might name specific stories that were happening in the news that they were relating to the photos and images that they discussed in the workshop, or things with election results. I could tell certain workshops were happening around inauguration time, so I could see that. But I think part of the beauty of it is we didn't have to identify who was who with their comments. We needed to honor the conversation and pull them together. And so will we see a finished product when? How does this work?
I'm actually very excited. The downtown library will be installing the poem on a wall in their special collection center. So that will be there visible for people to see. And they also created time-lapse videos of the writing process and organization process of doing the poem. So I think they'll be sharing those videos where people will see me going up and down a ladder, putting things on windows all over the place, so they'll be able to see the process along with the finished piece.
I love that.
There in the special collections room.
I love that. You have an interesting background too, one that I think has always been filled with art and writing, but at one point you used to be a professor teaching all of this stuff. Talk a little bit about the transition that you made from teaching college students how to do this, and always writing along the way, of course, but now sort of going and doing it full-time yourself.
Yes, I taught sometime at Vanderbilt and several other wonderful institutions, and learned a great deal myself from that teaching. And part of what I learned is that I really wanted to empower other artists and writers at a younger age. I was very lucky that my family was supportive of me being a poet, but I think a lot of us grow up maybe loving art or being interested in making art, but feeling like it's not
a career.
Exactly. It will be a hobby, but to actually make a living and have health insurance, you might need to choose something else. So I wanted to challenge myself to be a full-time working artist and help other artists to figure out ways to do that and find projects that might not be the traditional creative path. Typically, as a poet, I would focus on publishing books and publishing in literary journals, but I find projects like this one with civil rights and a civil society to be another form of publication, and that it's so fulfilling, and it feels like it has a very wide reach in the community, and that means a lot to me.
So you've taken it from campus out to the community, literally, what your work that you're doing and the teaching that you're doing, some might say, huh?
I hope so. I do hope so.
It's interesting because my son has a poetry assignment in school, and he said, "Why am I memorizing this poem? What am I going to do with it later?" And I said, "You wait and see." And this is what he can do with it later. I mean, it's not, gone are the days that you learn one poem and it's gone. You say it in front of the teacher and then you've lost it. But we are finding, I think, that writing and strong writing, no matter whether it's poetry or it's news writing or it's authoring a book, is key to you doing your job in this day and time, no matter what that job is.
Absolutely. In some of my education circles, we talk about the 21st century learning skills, and they are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And we know that students now need to focus on those, what some people would have said were soft skills, in order to really make it in the marketplace, in the workplace. And art, poetry, music. There's a lot of critical thinking involved in making art or memorizing art and understanding art.
Absolutely.
And I find students who have those skills often have a bit of a leg up on some of the competition.
I think you're right about that. You've got a book out, and we've got a minute or so left. So I know you've got a few books out.
Right.
Talk a little bit about some of those books very quickly and where people can find more information about you.
Sure. My first book was published about 12 years ago, and it's actually out of print. It's called I Am, a poetic journey towards self-definition. And my mother will tell you can only find that on her nightstand right now. But
you've got a free book too.
I do. I have a free chat book.
Seconds.
Right, and you can find it on my website at StephaniePruittCreates.com.
StephaniePruittCreates.com.
Yes.
So we'll go there and look for that book, and also to the library to see your beautiful poem that you've created out of the civil rights work that's been going on there. So thank you so much, Stephanie Pruitt, for being with us. We appreciate you, and we thank you for being here today. We'll see you again next time.